She has made her transition, and her music, her energy, her example live on. Monday is Memorial Day. Memorial Day is the federal holiday which honors people in the military who actually died in the line of duty, died in service. A lot of times people have barbecues. They have all kinds of different functions, and sometimes we forget. It is a bit confusing because we have Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Veterans Day, you honor people who served in the military or who served in the military and they're still around. Memorial Day, you honor the dead who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. And it is the last Monday of May. Most all of us have that day off. And so if you're one of those folks that pours some out for the for those who have passed on, well, let's celebrate them. I know in the African American community, we disproportionately have given service as military, inductees. Well, what I mean is people who are drafted or people who have volunteered, people who have found no other way out. Black people have fought valiantly to defend this country all throughout its history, whether this country gave us our rights or not. Back to reparations, getting texts and DMs. People are loving your idea, Deb. No taxes. Pay me back what I have already spent. And I've heard that before. My dad used to talk about that. He talked about no taxes. He talked about free education for black students who are descendants of enslaved Africans, and then not just the free college, but also the books, the housing, because the only way you have a level playing field in college is to have all the supportive stuff. You just throw someone in there, they don't have a place to live, food, or books. That's not how you get an education. The way you level the playing field and get what members of the dominant group have is by having everything they have that helps them to succeed in college. We talked about housing relief. We've talked about many different things that could make up reparation. And one of the things that I like about the California Task Force is that they have looked at many different areas in our enslavement and the subsequent discrimination and sort of parse them out. Well, this is worth this much to someone who's been in California for this long. Housing discrimination, the disproportionate impact of incarceration on our communities, Jim Crow, and so financial discrimination, and so on. And I think to really do justice to reparations, you have to take all of the ways in which we have been locked out, shut out, and stolen from into consideration. That's what Pastor Q was talking about earlier in the show when we were covering what he does, or what they will be doing at their new Peace and Healing Center. They're having a grand opening today at 3 down at 116 East 5th Street, is that you got to look at how we got to where we are. The fact that things like the GI Bill, right, excluded black people. So when wealth was transferred to people who served in this country, black folks were left out of that, even though we have served in every war valiantly, fiercely, honorably. There were no GI Bill bill funds handed out to our community. So let's think about how many generations of equity, how many generations of wealth that represents. How do you give that back? And I think, retroactive tax relief is one way. Is one way. I don't know how you would exempt black people from sales tax, but certainly income tax, state, federal, all of that could be on the table. Love to hear your thoughts about this and more. I'm a little worried about the debt ceiling. Looks like Biden has reached a deal, but to me, and we'll see if it comes through, but to me, that deal opens the door for more minority rule. When I talk about minority rule, I mean Republicans usurping the power of the people, because we voted for the Democrats, and we voted for the Democrats as president and over the Senate. But now the crazy minority in the House is leveraging their craziness to stop us from having the debt ceiling raised and the priorities that we voted in. And that is another form of minority rule by hostage taking on the part of the GOP. Love to hear from you. Phone lines are open, 800-920-1580. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
On Saturday, May 27th and Sunday, May 28th, join Pastor Shep Crawford and other local houses of worship for the Apology Tour. Details about the Saturday, May 27th press conference and the Sunday, May 28th walkout are available at theapologytour.com. The Apology Tour is a united effort to engage the community and serve the least among us by tearing down the walls of division, misunderstanding, and tension between the church and the community. The Apology Tour helps to address the impact of the pandemic, which created a greater distance between the beloved community and the Black church. The Apology Tour invites participating local ministries to walk out of the building and into the community for 1 to 4 hours on Sunday, May 28th at 12 noon to provide services and offer giveaways reflective of the community's needs assessment and priorities. For more information or to join this call to action, please visit theapologytour.com, changing the community through the spirit of God's love.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life and your choices with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age, but there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
At Lowe's, we're always bringing pros more ways to save. Right now, buy a select Metabo HPT cordless nailer and get a 36-volt 2.5 amp-hour battery free, a $139.99 value. And as a Lowe's MVP, buy select Owens Corning shingles and earn 2 times the bonus points per dollar. Lowe's knows pros. Valid 5/11 through 7/12. While supplies last. Selection varies by location. U.S. only. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Valid through 6/1. Subject to change.
King C. Gillette is the modern man's answer to their facial hair. With a complete set of precision tools, the King C. Gillette line offers the perfect fit for your facial hairstyle. Want to try something great? Try the Style Master, the quintessential styling tool that every man needs to craft their style. It's a waterproof, cordless trimmer with a long-lasting 4-directional blade. It's extremely versatile and designed to edge, trim, and stubble in 4 directions on any hair length. Master your style with King C. Gillette.
KBLA Talk 1580 is in the lab right now, prepping some new shows coming your way soon. More empowerment, more inspiration, more entertainment.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Jazz Urbane Hour. I'm your host, Bill Banfield. We are a curated musical show that highlights contemporary cultural issues and artistry, showcasing music as a relevant and necessary arm of contemporary cultural identity.
You must learn.
Welcome. I am your host, Dr. Tyrone Howard on KBLA Talk 1580, and you're listening to You Must Learn, where we talk about education as a tool for transformation. Education in our homes, in our schools, and in our communities. Education for transformation is the tagline, and we are here to talk about why we must learn.
KBLA Talk 1580 is for discerning listeners just like you. So tell all your friends you've discovered the talk station curating smart content for smart people. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got you black. Thanks for waking up with Dominique DePrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
And we were meant to be speaking with Dr. Bill Rutherford today, but he got stuck in transition and travel. And my colleague, Dr. Nicolai Cortez, jumping on with us for a moment. You know him from A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. He's a national affairs contributor for thegrio.com. And he is one of the hosts of The Black Report on Foxhole TV. Hi, Dr. Nicolai Cortez.
Hello, Dominique DePrima. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. Thanks for jumping on. I know you're one of the hardest working persons in show business at the moment. I was just speculating about the debt ceiling, and we're hearing that Biden is close to a deal, maybe a 2-year deal with McCarthy, where they would kind of freeze spending on almost everything except for the military, of course, and veterans, because the Republicans don't want to take that PR hit. Does this set up a precedent where every single time we want to raise the budgets, the debt ceiling, which is something we've always done, the minority party, i.e. the GOP, gets to hold the country hostage and usurp what voters actually put in place so that they can get their agenda through by blackmail?
Well, at least for 2 years. It'll be another 2 years until we find ourselves in a similar situation. That's if this deal holds. Look, this deal has been in flux. And, we know that the debt ceiling deadline is looming. We know that there have been a lot of investments that are important to our community, that are important to our listeners, that have seemingly been on the chopping block. We've seen in the headlines how, SNAP benefits have been on the chopping block in terms of worker requirements for SNAP benefits. The president said that he would not support any sort of worker requirements related to Medicaid recipients. And so those are just some clues as to what the GOP wants the most and what they might get if a Republican president were to win the White House in 2024 and if Republicans were to hold the House in 2024. And so they are telegraphing a lot. And I think you had it absolutely right, Dominique, before the break when you framed this as, the result of minority rule. Last time I checked, the United States did not negotiate with terrorists. And every headline that I have seen this week, it feels like we are negotiating with folks that don't mean this country good. I mean, look at the big win in terms of investing more in the IRS, so they have more staff to make sure that they are more fairly going after some of the tax cheats that are among us. Well, surprise, surprise, the GOP, wants to take away some of those dollars, and they are caping for tax cheats. And so, this negotiation is really telegraphing a lot, and it's important that the president and the Democrats hold their ground. It is not encouraging heading into a presidential election to see Democrats, to see this president potentially, giving in more than he has to. And so you better believe folks are following this very closely.
Yeah, I mean, between gerrymandering, the fact that they have way more senators than they should because we get 2 apiece per state, regardless of how many people are there, and Puerto Rico and D.C. don't even have senators. I mean, and that the voter suppression laws, they really have implemented minority rule where even though they don't win the popular vote and they don't win, the majority, they don't win the White House, they still find a way to control the agenda. Look at the Supreme Court, and this feels like one more place, an infringement upon our democracy, really.
It does. And, part of what they are fighting against is a multi-racial democracy. Because they know that when we show up and we vote and we make our voices heard and we pay attention, they know that things start to change. And that is a part of why we're encountering so much resistance here. Kevin McCarthy is trying to deliver to the MAGA wing of House Republicans. These are the folks that, as you might remember earlier this year, were the margin of victory that helped him to get the speakership in the first place. And so you have a weakened speaker, that is negotiating a deal that is not in the interest of we, the people.
Yeah.
And we need Democrats to hold tough, it's a negotiation. We're not in the strongest negotiating position, but nobody wants to see, us give away any more than we have to in order to raise the debt ceiling.
Okay, I mean, even the fact that the president ended up negotiating when he said he wouldn't is a win for Republicans. But I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right, to keep the global meltdown from happening. I want to ask you about a couple stories around Pride. I guess Target, sells Pride merchandise that starts in obviously next month. which is just a few days away. And so some right-wing influencers on social media and this massive anti-trans campaign that we see all over has targeted Target and said, take these things out, or else your employees may not be safe. You may have, you basically they're talking so much smack about them that their followers are threatening the employees of Target. You have that happening. At the same time, we saw the Los Angeles Dodgers invite, then disinvite the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. For those not familiar, it's like a satire comedy troupe of drag performers who dress up as nuns, like nuns with beards and stuff. And they do parades, they do community fest. I'm from the Bay, so I'm used to the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. They're pretty harmless. I mean, they just joke around in nun costumes, but they support a lot of progressive causes. Okay, people complaining, kind of like we talked about earlier in the show. One Proud Boy's mama complains, and Amanda Gorman's poem is out of the library. We saw the Dodgers disinvite, then reinvite the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. What do you think about this backlash that we're seeing right now ahead of Pride? It feels like part of a national move to sort of a theocracy, Taliban-style U.S. government. But how do you process it?
Well, I think part of it is we need to frame this as it is, and I'm not so sure if I would call it a backlash, because if you look where public opinion is on LGBTQ rights, on gay marriage, for example, the country has moved in a more progressive direction in a very short period of time. I mean, I remember, in graduate school studying the phenomenon of executive champions influencing corporate activism around LGBTQ rights, where we saw, big name brands coming out in support, of their LGBTQ employees and consumers. And so, I think there is a very small but vocal group of folks on the right that are trying to gin up a backlash. They're trying to gin it up. And I think the executives at Target and other executives in corporate America, don't be scared. Don't be afraid, to stand up to these folks who are essentially trying to bully you into moving merchandise out of your stores, for fear, that somebody might get hurt. That's called a bully. We don't need our president nor the leaders of any of these companies in corporate America capitulating to these bullies. I mean, these are the tactics that we're seeing from folks on the right. If you don't agree with the values of a company or an organization, then just don't shop there. But let's not make it popular. Let's not give them a win. Yeah. In terms of making those sorts of threats. And in order to stave off, any potential backlash, we move products out of the store. That's not who we are.
I mean, it's back to negotiating with terrorists, right? I mean, that's really what it is. You talk about white supremacists and these, conservative domestic terror groups being the number one threat to the country. To me, this is an example of that.
I think you're absolutely right. We can't give them oxygen. That's what they're on the hunt for. Right. Oxygen. They want us running scared in corporate America. They want us running scared in the media. They want us running scared in elected office, right? And keep in mind, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is running on an anti-woke agenda. Right. And so the fire is going to turn up. It's not going to turn down. And so the question is, where do you stand when that fire, when the heat gets hot? I think Target knows better. If you look at Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index, across a lot of different criteria, Target, has been, I think they've scored 100% a number of years in a row. They have been, unapologetically supportive of LGBTQ rights. And so, why the capitulation? Why the turn in the wrong direction? The executives at Target need to remember who they are, what their values are, and where they stand. Otherwise, they'll just be the first of many corporations to fold to these folks trying to whip up a backlash.
And it's a good point to Dr. Nicola-Corte, because when you look at people's attitudes towards LGBTQ plus communities, there is a huge generation gap. Especially, you see it in the black community, you see it in with white folks. And so it makes sense that a small group of backward folks would try to gin up, as you say, a backlash, because you can see when you look at what's happening, mostly happening with younger folks, where we're headed, which is not just tolerance, but total acceptance. Meanwhile, if you want to do a boycott, it's stupid to me, but if you want to do that, do that. There was a boycott of Budweiser over Budweiser deciding to do a partnership with a trans influencer. And apparently it's cost them close to $1 billion. Their sales are down 20%. Conservatives are not drinking Budweiser. And of course they pulled the partnership. But at least that's not terrorism. Like, I don't agree with it, but if you want to boycott and petition, do that. Don't threaten.
That's right. And it's so important that we do not capitulate to bullies. And we're going to see a lot more of this. I mean, for heaven's sakes, who would have ever thought, that, some, radical, person on the right, would show up at the home of the then Speaker of the House, and bludgeon her husband, right? I mean, this sort of rhetoric, this sort of capitulation, can lead to violence. It can enable violence, right? And so, people can vote with their pocketbooks. People can vote with their feet. That way of peaceful protest, that's a part of who we are. That's a part of our history. That's normal. What's not normal is if you don't say or do what aligns with my beliefs, then I threaten violence against your employees. I threaten harm.
I stormed the Capitol. Right, exactly.
I storm the Capitol. I show up at the House Speaker's home and bludgeon their husband. Those things aren't normal, and we've got to call it out. And for folks that are trying to whip up these backlashes, we need to stop them in their tracks. And this is the time for us to do that.
Speaking of bullies, apparently Elon Musk was quite angry that they had a Twitter fail when they announced Ron DeSantis's presidential run on Twitter, and they were about 20 minutes late getting up and running, and then really buggy, glitchy, terrible audio. Apparently, Mr. Musk was quite furious. It seemed like not a good look for Mr. DeSantis. And he's down in the polls, but he seems to be going full force attacking to Trump, which I think I'm going to enjoy. What are your thoughts about that whole rollout fiasco?
I mean, not surprised that Governor DeSantis is not ready for prime time. And not surprised that Elon Musk is not ready for prime time. I mean, remember the whole blue check fiasco over at Twitter?
Yes.
Launching, presidential campaigns is an art and a science, and they don't got it. And so they're going to try and make up for it. And I'm sure this means that Governor DeSantis is having to beat up on former President Trump probably sooner than he had hoped.
Okay.
It's interesting that, while Elon Musk has invited all presidential candidates to, have a sort of town hall on Twitter, it's interesting who he picked first. and it wasn't Trump.
That is interesting. Yeah. And it's funny to me that Twitter employees were
a little bit. I don't know.
And reportedly, Twitter employees were telling Elon Musk, like, this is not, we're still in the beta testing. This isn't, Twitter Spaces is not ready for this, but he didn't listen, and he's fired most of those folks anyway. So you get what you get, I guess.
You get what you get.
Well, I guess to your point, we'll see whether Ron DeSatan is ready for prime time or not, because prime time is happening now. Dr. Nicola-Corte, thank you so much for checking in with me this morning. Remind us how to follow you and see you.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Nicola Live. Be sure to listen to A More Perfect Union this Sunday. We're going to have White House Director Steve Benjamin, the former mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. We got a lot to talk about him, including the third anniversary of George Floyd and what we can expect from this White House, this Congress, these Democrats as we head into the fall.
Always a great show on Sundays with Dr. Kortai. Thank you, sir. Continuing this conversation after news, traffic, and sports, Akili joins us on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
I'm Ray Harris, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. You can expect a big travel surge for Memorial Day weekend, as nearly 43 million Americans will be headed out for the holiday.
The good news is, for those who are planning to drive this holiday, gas prices are more than $1 less than they were this time last year. So that should certainly bode well for those drivers who plan to take that great American road trip.
That's Regina Ali with AAA, who says to avoid hitting the road on Friday, when traffic is expected to be at its heaviest. And regardless of what day you hit the road, they say try to avoid between 3 and 6 p.m. when traffic will be at its worst. TSA spokesperson Lisa Farbstein says the agency is expected to screen roughly 10 million travelers this weekend alone.
We're going to probably screen about 2.6 million passengers per day, especially Friday.
And that's the latest from the Black Information Network at BINnews.com.
Need an accident attorney by your side? All you got to do is call the accident guys.
Injured in a car accident or at work? Call the accident guys to speak with a real expert attorney for a free consultation.
Is this the tackle? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Denver Nuggets still don't know who they're going to play in the NBA Finals. The Boston Celtics stayed alive in the Eastern Conference Finals with a 13-point win over Miami. Miami now has a 3-2 lead in the series. Boston is already favored by 2.5 points in Game 6. The pressure is squarely on the Heat to regroup. Game 6 is Saturday night in Miami, 5:30 tip on TNT. The NBA Competition Committee is considering giving a technical free throw to opposing teams when a player tries to flop. Players flopping in an effort to draw offensive fouls is becoming a nuisance for the league office in New York. The NBA will test the potential new rule at the Summer League in Las Vegas in July. The LA Sparks suffered their 11th straight loss to the Las Vegas Aces. Aces guard Jackie Young had a game-high 30 points. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, in downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Hi, I'm Dominique DePrima. At the Amundsen Theater, now through June 25th, Norm Lewis stars in A Soldier's Play, directed by Kenny Leone. Charles Fuller's Pulitzer Prize-winning drama and Tony Award-winning play, A Soldier's Play, is now on stage. In 1944, on a Louisiana Army base, a black sergeant is murdered, triggering a gripping barrage of questions about sacrifice, service, and identity in America. I'm looking forward to seeing the show myself. Get your tickets at amundsentheater.org. That's amundsentheater.org.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
Colleague stepping up this morning, colleague Akili Folks in the movement call him Baba Akili. He's founder of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute, an organizer with Black Lives Matter LA, but also a long-time campaign organizer, political strategist for mainstream Democratic candidates, including the campaign of President Barack Obama. So while those of us in LA may be used to seeing him protesting on freeways and and jumping into city council meetings, he certainly has been in the mainstream of American politics more than most. Welcome, Akili.
Good morning, Dominique, and good morning to the KBLA family. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for coming on. So I'm going to ask you to put on that Democratic strategist hat for just a moment. And of course, the Fannie Lou Hamer hat and the BLM hat never come off. What do you make of the conversation I was having right now with Dr. Nicolai Corte? Like what it means that President Biden is basically being forced to negotiate with hostage takers in just raising the debt ceiling, which means covering money we've already spent. It's not about future priorities. It's about covering money we've already spent and keeping the country and really the world from going into some kind of economic collapse.
Well, I think this is a reflection of how they see government. And what this really is about is that they want to shrink the size of government so you can drown it in a bathtub. And that is what has fueled what they do, what they think, and how they govern. They don't want. I mean, when they came into power, the first thing they did is they give a tax break to the wealthiest people. They come back into power again, and the first thing they do is they cut benefits to people who need it. So that's the kind of party it is, and those are the kind of people it is. They always talk about small government. They always talk about how they want to freedom for taxpayers and the rest. But the first thing they do is they give a break to the rich, and they cut the poor. And this is an example of that. They won by saying that, and this statement that we want a smaller government that we can drown in the bathtub has been around for a long time. And if you look at the programs that are working, and you look at what happened during the pandemic and how we had to, the spending that needed to keep the country afloat, that was necessary. And now what they'd like to do is cut all of that and make sure that we go back to holding veterans. I mean, they want to cut veterans policies. They certainly want to cut any programs or projects that help working poor people. And so I think that it is their colors. It is how they see the world. The rich are deserving, the poor are not. And let's make sure that the poor don't have anything from the U.S. government.
And of course, this idea of small government, it's very selective. They want small government where they want it small, and they want intrusive government where they want it intrusive. When it comes to deciding what books you can read or what you can do with your body, what your children can be taught in school, big government is no problem. When it comes to fixing roads and bridges and housing unhoused people and health care for elders, then suddenly they want it small.
Well, and that, I think, underscores the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, which is predominantly white. And it has upheld, and I think there is an example of white supremacy. It is a primarily white party that focuses on white people's interests. And with the DeSantis and Bush, and Trump administration, they focus on white grievance. And want to do everything they can to feed that grievance, that somehow or another white people are losing out, that somehow or another white people have lost out, that somehow or another that white people are not getting everything they deserve. And they're feeding on that. And, if you couple that feed on that, the white grievance and hypocrisy, you get the white supremacist Republican Party.
And, the Democratic Party, although it's a little bit more inclusive, is also, it's having its own internal struggle, right? So the big tent means you have progressives, mostly more people of color, younger people coming into the party, but even some elders, and, kind of vying against the more traditional centrist elements of the party. How is that playing out in California with our state apparatus here, and how do you see that playing out on the national stage?
Well, I think the California Democratic Party could lead the way. And in some cases it is. I think what Assemblymember Isaac Bryan is doing and what Senator Lola Smallwood-Cuevas and Assemblywoman Tina McKenna are doing are bringing forth legislation that is very much on the progressive side and leading, in some cases pushing California to be the kind of progressive state it needs to be. But they have to push their colleagues, and they have to, in some cases, drag them. And so California could be an example of how you can create public policy that really meets the needs, interests, and concerns of the people, all the people. But unfortunately, the corporate concerns, the narrow special interests, tend to dominate what goes on in Sacramento, and they tend to spend a lot more time, energy, and effort stopping legislation than they do supporting legislation. So I think the Democratic Party, its leadership, is trying to walk this line between how can we be progressive, but also make sure that we keep our corporate Dems
progressive, but not
also.
Progressive, right? So, do you think it's significant that the state convention is taking place here in Los Angeles this weekend? Because this tends to be where the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is seated. It's Los Angeles and San Francisco for the most part.
It is, and I think that the fact that it is happening here is a good indication, and that there will probably be a number of internal struggles within the party, particularly around the questions of progressivism and what's progressivism. For me, what I've observed is that there are some people in the party who will certainly argue for good public policy, and they will, call for it. They won't fight for it, and that I think is the real difference. And I think that the leadership at the top is going to have to kind of walk this tightrope. And when I say the tightrope is between the very active, very assertive progressives who are in the Assembly and Senate, and the more moderate Democrats who say, well, let's just go along to get along. Let's try to embrace and do the best we can. And I think that that's not enough. One of the downsides and saddest things about California is that we have among the largest poverty rates in the country, but yet we are among the richest states in the country. And we have got to tackle that. I think the mayor of Fresno, Michael Tubbs, talked about the benefit of guaranteed income, and Supervisor Holly Mitchell and Curran Price and Councilman Curran Price have looked at doing that and what it means. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that, a lot to be benefited from that, and I think that's one way of helping the California working poor grow. But that's a progressive idea that you got to fight for. On the other side, you have people say, well, that's too far, that's too extreme, I don't know if we can do that. And so we have that kind of tension. And one of the things that's happening is that California doesn't have as much money as, its budget is shrinking. So you make choices. And one of the things I think, that you have to argue for, if you're going to choose the people first.
Yeah.
The corporations, they always got their advocates. The landlords, the powerful landlords, they got an advocate. They got theirs. Unless there's people who say, how will this impact and help people, then we will make these short-sighted decisions like we have in the past. So I think they got to struggle with that at the convention.
Akili is my guest this morning. Not too late to check in. Love to hear from you. It's been almost exactly 3 years since the murder of George Floyd and massive marches. When we come forward, Akili, love to get your thoughts on that. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DePrima when we come forward.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcasts of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Past Director of Programming and General Manager Asantewaa Olatunji named Los Angeles Cultural Affairs Commissioner by Mayor Karen Bass. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News. She's an attorney and an arts advocate excited about serving in the development of the cultural landscape in LA County. Olatunji is the co-founder of the Pan-African Film Festival, also known as PAF. She began her career as an entertainment lawyer on staff with Paramount Pictures. Her legal career was diverse, and she was on general counsel for the LA Black Employees Association, amongst many other affiliations. Her new role with the city will make her a member of the advisory board responsible for the review and approval of all architecture and artwork on or over city property. Congratulations. I'm Maisha Cairo, and this is KBLA Talk 1580. The pandemic may be over, but many Angelenos could be at risk of losing the place they call home. It's important to know your rights as a residential renter in the city of LA. Did you know eviction protection still exists for unpaid COVID-19 rental debt that was due before March 31st, 2023? And that you have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice, also known as an unlawful detainer. Learn more about your rental rights at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
Broadcasting live from Lamar Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio, KBLA Talk 1580.
Akili is our guest, known widely as Baba Akili. He is the founder of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute and a lead organizer with Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, among other hats that he wears. 3 years, Akili, since George Floyd was killed by Minnesota police. And then, again, the activism that came out of that. For people like you who had been organizing long before 2020, that was not new, but certainly it changed the game in terms of the number of folks worldwide that were plugged in, tuned in. How do you see this 3 years later?
Well, a couple of things. I think, one, it cracked open the world, as Dr. Melina Abdullah talks about, and it so disgusted people around the world that they expressed that disgust. And one of the things I think I will never forget were two things. One, Derek Chauvin looking in the face of the camera with his knee on George Floyd's neck. And you could see how he didn't see George Floyd as human. And he had his hand in his pocket, and it was just done very nonchalantly. Yes, I'm choking this man. That will forever be burned in my mind. And how, if you dehumanize a person, you can do that you can keep your knee on that person's neck for almost 10 minutes until they die. The other thing for me is the massive demonstration that we had here June 7th. And it was, one of the biggest demonstrations that I had participated in. It was all we could do to kind of keep it together and keep it moving and make sure that it turned out and express and uplift the outrage that was there. But those two things stand out for me. The other thing that stands out for me, that it takes Black death to awaken white America to the problems that Black people have been talking about, protesting, and demanding change for years. And then when it happens, there's always this shock. Oh, what's wrong? Oh, we didn't know it was this bad. Oh, and we saw it in 1965 uprisings. We saw it in 92. We've seen it time and time again. But Black death is just too high a price to pay to wake white people up. And it's too high a price for any people to pay. But George Floyd's death at least woke white folks up for that time and period. And it's what we do after that, that I think has kept the at least the door open for the kind of substantive change, transformative change that we've been calling for and demanding ever since we got here.
Yeah, and it's, I think, really easy for people to get discouraged. I hear it a lot. Well, people aren't in the streets. It all added up to nothing. And then folks get caught up in the anti-BLM and anti-woke propaganda that is so thick right now. And we forget the amount of money, the amount of policies, resources, attitudes that were shifted in ways that won't shift back. I mentioned this talking with Dr. Melina Abdullah. We know that corporations pledge tens of millions of dollars to anti-racist groups, and yet most of that money will never actually arrive because a lot of them just put out the press release and then never did it. But even the small percentage that did is a huge moving of the needle. I think people are in corporate spaces, on boards. They're getting opportunities within education, within entertainment, because of the work of Black Lives Matter and anti-racist groups worldwide in 2020, before and after that, and that work continuing. And so I guess my question out of that statement is, how do you stay encouraged, and how do you see the progress versus backlash ratio?
Well, yeah, that has been a question that's been asked of me for now close to 50 years. How do I stay? I mean, seriously. On Wednesday at our regular in Police Association protest, we devoted it to George Floyd and remembering George Floyd, and people came out then. People are still in the streets. People are still taking their issues and uplifting them and forcing people in power to listen, and so that's still happening. And one of the things that I've observed over the years, there's a kind of ebb and flow, a kind of peak and valley with making real substantive change. It comes in these waves. You take advantage of it. You make sure that you're prepared. You make sure that you uplift and advance what's going on, and then you just keep doing the work. You keep doing the work. I mean, in my case, I just keep doing the work, in large part because it's the only thing I've ever known. But for me, it is what makes me whole. And so, and being able to be in communication with good people and in community with good people who, we see the progress that's been made, and we keep fighting. And so this is one of the, we had this peak in 2020. But once again, it came at the cost of a Black man's life. That is something I don't want to see. That is something I want to work to end. Because if it takes Black death to awaken people that something is wrong in the society, like I said earlier, that's too high a price for any of us to pay. For me, and certainly for those of us with Black Lives Matter and all the other groups that have been out here for a long time, and we're going into celebrating 10 years now, we will continue to do the work. We will continue to make the challenge. We will continue to confront, and we will continue to disrupt as we work toward ending state-sanctioned violence in all its forms, social, political, and economic.
Akili is with me this morning, and I guess when we come forward, before we proceed into the best of Tavis Smiley, like we do every Friday, I'm going to ask you for your call to action. I have a feeling it's a list. That's all good because, Friday's a great day to lighten up, celebrate, and have fun. But hey, why not set our intentions to get some justice? KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
Want your MBA? The California Institute of Advanced Management is the place. An accredited nonprofit institution, we offer dedicated faculty and small class sizes. We're committed to high-impact learning that affects social change and make it easy with no GRE required and a 24-month program of weekend and online classes. Enrolling now for 2023 classes with financial aid and scholarships available. Visit ciam.edu to learn more. That's ciam.edu, the California Institute of Advanced Management. Management that matters.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family was founded to help address domestic violence and sexual assault in the Asian and the Pacific Islander communities. The Center for the Pacific Asian Family's mission is to build healthy and safe communities by addressing the root causes and consequences of family violence and violence against women. They are committed to meeting the specific cultural and language needs of the Asian and Pacific Islander women and their families. CPAF's vision is of an Asian and Pacific Islander community that embraces healthy relationships and works in partnership with other communities to eradicate all forms of violence. To access services, volunteer, or for more info, visit nurturingchange.org. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe everyone deserves to be safe. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Calling all small business owners, entrepreneurs, and startups. Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation is your one-stop shop for the resources and tools you need to take your business to the next level. VSEDC is a community-based nonprofit and CDFI organization recognized for decades of technical and entrepreneurial assistance to South LA small businesses, startups, and entrepreneurs for 40 years. VSEDC provides training workshops and your very own business coach, and these services are all free. That's right, these services are free. Business coaches are standing by at their South LA Business Source Center or their Watts Business Source Center. Visit their website at vsedc.org or call them now at 323-752-2335. That's Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation at 323-753-2335.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DePrima on First Things First.
Akili is with us. Akili, longtime campaign organizer, now founder of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute and lead organizer for Black Lives Matter LA. Happy Friday to you, Akili. What's your call or calls to action for us on this Friday?
Well, my first and always call is join us every Wednesday, and I don't want to say it because it will the way I normally say it, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. To call for an end to police associations, which pilfer the public purse. They bribe elected officials, and they take enormous amounts of funding from, and they protect killer cops. So every Wednesday at 4 p.m., we are out in front of ACLU and across the street from the Police Protective League. So always join us there. And we've been out there for 119 weeks.
Wow,
because,
that's 2 years plus.
It is.
It's going
it
in
is.
toward 3 years, actually.
It is.
Wow.
Yes, it is. And that's part of, I think, one of the benefits of Black Lives Matters is that we do more than just hold press conferences and a rally here and there. We believe in being consistent and regular because that's how change is made. So join us every Wednesday at 4 p.m. at 1313 West 8th Street as we send a message and make our demands to end police associations and support our call to end qualified immunity, which is what has protected abusive police departments and police. And so we want to acknowledge and thank Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley for reintroducing the legislation again. And so there are places you can go to support that. And we want to acknowledge our own Sidney Comlinger for co-sponsoring it and signing on. And so those are some of the things that are happening, that we stay in the streets, we stay, continue to challenge. We show up at the Police Commission every Tuesday. LA Police Commission, and every Tuesday at the Torrance Police Commission. At the Torrance City Council. So Black Lives Matter is still very active, still very much involved, and still very much on the front lines.
And you, of course, can sometimes hear Akili as part of the Black Lives Matter radio show, which is called This Is Not a Drill, Saturday mornings right here on KBLA Talk 1580. We can track all this stuff at the social media of BLMLA and Black Lives Matter Grassroots.
Yes, absolutely. And we, all of our social, our IG, our Facebook, and our Twitter. So we are BLMLA, and then you can fill in with your IG, with all the other forms. But we're there, and you can always follow us.
All right, Akili, thanks for checking in.
And thank you for having me this morning. I enjoyed it.
I like to end with a quote when I have time left. Today we're going with Asada Shakur. Pastor Q said it to start off the show. She says, "We must love and protect one another." That's always got to be the priority. The best of Tavis Smiley is up next. As usual, an amazing lineup for you. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Memorial Day. I'm Dominique DePrima. History is now, and we are making it together. Until next time, be safe, be well, one love.
KBLA